My friends, there are good news for Ukraine, with the United States announcing a $61 billion military aid package. It's an early Christmas for the armed forces of Ukraine. A lot of military equipment is already flowing towards the country, like this convoy of M777 artillery pieces spotted somewhere in Poland, as well as tens of thousands of artillery rounds that are currently being produced and that will soon be on their way to the front. Meanwhile, the European Union allocated a new budget to produce 2 million artillery shells for Ukraine. The initiative of the Czech Republic secured a first batch of 180,000 rounds, and they're working on another 300,000. Despite the critical situation at the front, Ukraine is starting to see the light at the end of the tunnel. Although we're not sure yet if it's the exit or a charging Tsar Mangal tank. At this point, the Ukrainian battle plan for 2024 is simple. Hold the line, inflict as many casualties on the Russian armed forces as possible, while they wait for reinforcements from the latest mobilization law, as well as lethal aid and ammunition deliveries from their US and European partners. A coalition of European countries aim for the first deliveries of 24 F-16s to start this summer, out of a total of 97 meant for Ukraine. Spain is about to send an additional 19 Leopard 2A4s to Ukraine. Sweden and Denmark have announced the joint production of 35 new CV-90 midlife update infantry fighting vehicles, also meant for Ukraine. Meanwhile, Bulgaria will transfer 100 BTR-60PB they had in storage. The US pledged 250 M1117 Guardian armored security vehicles, equipped with a 40mm Mark 19 grenade launcher and a 50 caliber heavy machine gun. And the Christmas list goes on, with France promising to send hundreds of its VAB armored personnel carriers to Ukraine, as well as a total of 78 Caesar howitzers. On top of that, Germany will send a new batch of 1,855mm PZH-2000 self-propelled howitzers. A number of NATO vehicles also made it to the Red Square in Moscow, but not really as it was initially expected. Oh, I almost forgot! The German government also promised to deliver 400 MRAPs, but this was later reduced to 200 and then 100 units that will nonetheless be delivered by June 2024 to help Germany fulfill its promise. Canada wants to build a tank factory in Germany. In December 2023, Canadian firm Roshel had already delivered 1,000 vehicles to Ukraine, and they said they can send even more, as they currently have 100 units of the new Senator MRAP in stock. And since no party is complete without the Brits,
yeah, baby!
The United Kingdom is to send £500 million worth of armament to Ukraine. This includes over 1,600 strike and air defense missiles, 60 boats and raiding crafts, more than 400 vehicles, like the 160 units of the Husky MRAP, and nearly 4 million rounds of small arms ammunition. Meanwhile, what we'll focus on today is how Ukraine is also looking at asymmetric warfare tactics to win the war. We're talking about cross-border sabotage raids, drone and missile strikes on Russia's critical infrastructure, like the latest attack on Slavyansk-na-Kubani refinery in Krasnodar Oblast, plus its campaign to sink the Black Sea Fleet, especially now with ATACMS missiles within range of the Sebastopol harbor.
Oh shit, here we go again.
This video is sponsored by Delete Me. Have you ever been freaked out by ads a bit too personalized? To be honest, I did. Reality is, if you use social media, browse the web, or purchase items online using your credit card, your personal information is being tracked and sold. For example, when you click Accept Cookies, websites can store your personal information and resell it to what is called data brokers. And that's how your email address ends up in countless mailing lists. However, you have the right to stay private and protect your personal data. That's why I recommend Delete Me. Just take a look at all the data brokers my private data got deleted from. Now it's all clean. Of course, you can request each data broker individually to delete your data, but this process is long, difficult, and with no guarantee of success. Instead of doing it yourself, sit back and let Delete Me remove your private data from hundreds of data broker websites. And to help you, Delete Me offers you 20% off when you go to joindeleteme.com/HistoryLegends. Or use the link in the description below and use promo code HistoryLegends at checkout. Thank you Delete Me for sponsoring this video. Although the Russian armed forces are making gains in Donetsk Oblast, we cannot say the same about other parts of the front. If we do a quick overview, for example, the Ukraine commander in Siversk is really top tier, S tier. For more than a year, the Ukrainian troops in that sector defended the vital road linking Lysychansk, Bakhmut to Slavyansk. That was the front line in May 2023, and here's the latest frontline situation around Siversk. Barely any change. Further north, despite their unfavorable conditions with the Oskol River in their back, the Ukrainian army managed to hold the line along the Luhansk front and still maintain combat positions all around Kupiansk. We could also talk about the Ukrainian forces defending Klishivka and how extremely stubborn they are. Technically, we could say the same about the Battle of Krinky. Not saying it makes much sense militarily speaking, but against the odds, Ukrainian Marines managed to hold on to their bridgehead on the east bank of the Dnieper. And according to the latest news, they even managed to expand their area of control. In February 2024, Syrskyi was appointed Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces of Ukraine. Not gonna lie, he took over a very difficult situation at the front, especially with the sharp increase of Russian airstrikes completely obliterating Ukrainian defensive positions. One hope would be the urgent strengthening of the Ukrainian Air Force, which must have been bled dry in the battle for the sky of Ukraine. Denmark agreed to transfer 19 of its F-16s to Ukraine, and Greece is planning to deliver another 32. The Netherlands promised 24 units to the Ukrainian Air Force, and Norway is to transfer an additional 22 F-16s. We could be looking at a total of 97 F-16s to be delivered, and like the actress in the latest movie I watched said, it's huge! Of course, now the only thing is to find enough trained pilots for these aircraft. Here, French newspaper Le Monde said, Ukrainian F-16 pilots trained by Europeans will not be ready before the end of 2024. Another problem for the Ukrainian Air Force is that US-made small diameter bombs munitions have proven to be largely ineffective in Ukraine. The US also plans to reinforce Ukrainian air defense capabilities with a new batch of Patriot missile launchers. At this point, Syrskyi's mission is to hold the line while mobilized personnel arrive to fill in the gaps. Here from The Guardian, Ukrainian MPs pass controversial mobilization bill to boost troop numbers. Ukraine also has high hopes behind NATO's training mission. I think they believe in it more for ideological reasons than for practical ones, because most Ukrainian conscripts are getting the Afghanistan training package, with Norwegian conscripts teaching trench warfare to Ukrainian conscripts. Spanish newspaper El País interviewed Phoenix, a Ukrainian intelligence service member stationed on the Pokrovsk front. He said, I quote, I have spoken with 1,000 soldiers on this front, and my conclusion is that NATO's military theory is useless. That's why most ideologically motivated units with soldiers covered in Hindu and Nordic tattoos like the Azov Brigade prefer to take themselves care of the training of their new recruits. Apart from beefing up its armed forces for conventional warfare and the battle of attrition happening on the Eastern Front, Ukraine's headquarters is now dominated by spy chief Kirill Budanov. On the 25th of February, the New York Times released an interesting article titled The Spy War: How the CIA Secretly Helps Ukraine Fight Putin. Here are some interesting quotes. Around 2016, the CIA began training an elite Ukrainian commando force known as Unit 2245. One officer in the unit was Kirill Budanov, now the general leading Ukraine's military intelligence. General Budanov was a rising star in Unit 2245. He was known for daring operations behind enemy lines and had deep ties to the CIA, disguised in Russian uniforms. Then Lieutenant Colonel Budanov led commandos across a narrow gulf in inflatable speedboats landing at night in Crimea. And that's also the operation where he got wounded. Overall, this is the type of military operations that Budanov wants to continue. Daring raids, but on a much larger scale. Think of the SAS during World War II. From his perspective, the battle of attrition is not favorable to Ukraine. The only way to win the war is through some form of guerrilla warfare using special operations. The goal is to flip the script and wage a total, modern, and asymmetric war on Russia by bringing the battle right onto enemy territory. Think of the Ukrainian commandos aboard speedboats that seize some oil and gas platforms in the Black Sea, just a step away from Crimea. Or GUR operatives carrying multiple sabotage missions behind enemy lines, like this one from the 8th of April 2024, where they started the fire aboard their Buyan M-class corvette Serpukhov in Kaliningrad. Or like in March, where Ukraine's GUR successfully hacked into the Ministry of Defense of Russia. One of their latest raids happened just a few days ago on the 26th of April, when the Ukrainian sabotage team destroyed a Ka-32 multi-purpose helicopter on the tarmac of the Astafieva military airfield in Moscow. Allegedly, Ukrainian operatives even struck PMC Wagner mercenaries in Sudan. Some other example of this asymmetric war was the latest Ukrainian incursions into Belgorod Oblast. A first series of raids took place in May 2023, and the second round in March 2024, right before Russia's presidential elections. Publicly, the operation was carried out by multiple battalions of the Russian Freedom Legion and the Russian Volunteer Corps, or RDK in Russian.
Мы идем, чтобы освободить вас от нищеты, бедности и страха, освободить от диктатуры террористической организации, захватившей власть.
In reality, I don't think there are more than 200 Russian volunteers in both of these units combined. Here you see the full strength of one of their battalions. 20 soldiers at most. This invasion force, or more like a raiding party, was reinforced with various elements like GUR operatives and volunteers from Ukraine's International Legion, including a number of Poles like you can see in this video. Overall, multiple hundreds of men, perhaps as many as 1,000 to 1,500. The objective was to infiltrate across the Russian border and push as far as possible to sow chaos in Belgorod Oblast. Everything started on the 12th of March, when Ukrainian troops crossed the border in Kazinka, Nekhativka, Shebekina, and Gorkovsky. Essentially the same plan as in 2023, only this time there were more troops and they benefited from a larger armored component. Now, during this operation, the Ukrainian advance was supported by multiple artillery strikes from various Czech RM-70 Vampire MR-less systems. The only problem is that they mainly targeted residential sectors of Belgorod, causing a number of civilian casualties. It was maybe dirty, but at the same time it was done on purpose. For example, on the 25th of March, Russian air defense crews intercepted 22 rockets fired from these Vampire MR-less systems, but a number still got through. The continuous shelling did destroy some buildings.
Are we the baddies?
But this terror campaign backfired. According to this article by the Washington Post, the population of Belgorod increasingly supported the president during the election because of all these strikes. Now in terms of ground operations, many times Ukrainian forces had to push through in open terrain, so the furthest point of advance in every sector was at most 3 kilometers. After the Russian forces recovered from the initial shock, they simply shelled Ukrainian columns with everything they had available, making any additional move forward extremely difficult for Ukraine. By the 7th of April, anti-Putin Russian volunteers had left Belgorod Oblast. Yet, Wikipedia in all its scope claimed the operation was inconclusive. Are you kidding me? The objective was clearly to cause social unrest in Russia. Perhaps they were hoping to get more volunteers and to start a civil war in the country, or perhaps provoke the Russian army enough into diverting troops from Donbass and redeploy them all the way to the north. Maybe bait them into an offensive towards Kharkiv. But Russia did not take the bait. The Russian population overwhelmingly supported their government. So in the end, these cross-border incursions ended in a failure. However, this guerrilla war nonetheless pins down a big number of Russian security forces all across the border and inside the Russian cities. Police and military personnel that could be used right on the front line. Ukraine also found a way to force Russia to divert precious air defense batteries from the front towards the rear to defend their critical infrastructure. Now, as you can imagine, Ukraine can only hurt Russia so much with its sabotage missions and ground operations. With the help of intelligence services and GUR operatives, Ukrainian HIMARS continuously strike Russian command and control centers or various concentration of troops. Simultaneously, Ukraine also ramped up a new form of guerrilla warfare, with drones and missile strikes to cripple the Russian economy as well as its ability to support the war effort. For example, here are the fuel requirements for some Soviet-era armored vehicles. The fuel capacity of a T-72 is 1,200 liters. For BMP-1, it's 1,400 liters. And for BTR-80, it's 300. No fuel, no offensive. No offensive, no Donbass. No Donbass, no victory. So apart from military bases, logically the main targets were oil refineries. Now, as you can see on this map, most of Russia's oil refineries are located within 1,500 kilometers of Ukrainian territory. However, 40% still remain beyond the reach of Ukraine's current weapons. Although the current campaign started in January with attacks on the Ost-Luga fuel terminal and Tuapse refineries, the real offensive started on the 12th of March, right before Russia's presidential elections, with a series of very precise drone strikes on Russian refineries. Drone strikes were reported in Kuibyshev, Ryazan, Novoshakhtinsk, Norsy, Kirishi, Syzran, the Slavyansk refinery in south of Krasnodar Oblast, and another in Kaluga, all within 700 to 1,000 kilometers from Ukraine. Some refineries, like the one in Novoshakhtinsk, reported no significant damage, and many resumed operations the same day. However, others came to a complete halt. The Ryazan oil refinery accounts for 5.8% of Russia's total refined crude oil. Ukraine hit bullseye on the 13th of March. The refinery was set ablaze after being hit by multiple drones. It took 2 weeks for the refinery to return to 60% of its normal intake capacity. The combination of these strikes disrupted 14% of Russia's total refined oil output. You can see a clear drop in weekly gasoline production around March 2024. Russia had barely time to recover. That Ukraine launched a new wave of drone strikes in late April. Ukraine struck an oil refinery in Smolensk district and an oil storage terminal in Yartsevo. The next day, oil tanks were set on fire in Omsk. It's a low-cost, high-payout campaign that Ukraine can continue to wage on enemy installations. Russia found a low-cost solution to the problem by protecting their oil depots with cope cages. Of course, Ukraine also ramped up its aerial raids by targeting military facilities. Listen up, on the 2nd of April, a Cessna-type drone packed with TNT successfully traveled over 1,000 kilometers and struck a Shahid drone production center in Tatarstan. The Ukrainians essentially converted an Aeropract A-22 aircraft into an unmanned aerial vehicle. How, you might ask? Well, David Axe from Forbes wrote the following. Remember that in 2019, the US Air Force stripped the seats and controls out of a 1968 vintage Cessna 206 light plane and installed in their place a set of computer-driven servos. Since it's based on a sport plane, the production cost of this A-22 drone is around $90,000 USD. still much cheaper than an air defense missile. Talking about this, on top of drone strikes, Ukraine also resorted to missile strikes. Surprise, surprise, Ukraine uses long-range missiles secretly provided by the US. And here the New York Times reveals President Biden secretly approved the decision to send more than 100 of the longer-range missiles in mid-February. These ATACMS missiles have a range of 300 kilometers and thus greatly expand the number of targets Ukraine could strike inside Russia. In the night of April 4th, Ukraine targeted 3 Russian airfields, the one in Engels and the one in Yeysk, but the main strike took place against Morozovsk, a Russian airbase home to a good number of Su-27 and Su-34 aircraft. Although Russia claims to have shot down 44 drones that were on their way to Morozovsk airfield and that no serious damage was inflicted, Ukraine claims to have destroyed 6 fighter aircraft and damaged another 8. Ukraine also found a new way to destroy enemy aircraft. For example, on the 19th of April, the GUR and the Ukrainian Air Force ambushed a Russian Tupolev 22 M3 supersonic bomber over Stavropol and shot it down with a modified S-200 missile at a distance of 300 kilometers. Oh yeah, 2 days before, on the 17th, Ukraine also targeted the Jankoy airfield in Crimea. 12 ATACMS missiles were launched from Kherson in 2 waves, and according to the satellite image, the Ukrainians destroyed 4 Russian S-400 surface-to-air missile launchers. Here's another picture of the resulting effects of these missile strikes. This was a disaster for Russia. They basically lost an entire S-400 battery. That's more than $800 million gone, just like that. Now, by destroying Russian air defense capabilities in Crimea, the next target could very well be the Kerch Bridge, which German generals openly discussed about destroying in March 2024. And this brings us to the next topic. Apart from the Crimean Bridge, the other target could be Russia's Black Sea Fleet. Ukraine has no navy, but it's hammering Russia in the Black Sea. Here's a diagram from December 2023 with all the Russian warships that Ukraine managed to sink or damage. If we add in the strikes from 2024, this is what we would get. It's definitely a source of worry for Russia. Also notice how Ukraine destroyed or damaged 9 out of 14 amphibious warfare vessels. Ukraine uses 3 methods to destroy enemy warships. Number 1, using surface kamikaze drones, like the very famous invention by the GUR, the Magura V5. These swarms of Magura USVs actually sunk 3 Russian warships. To counter them, the Russians now positioned a number of barges at the entrance of their harbors. Method number 2, with Neptune RK-360 anti-ship cruise missiles. And method number 3, with cruise missiles fired from aircraft. On the 23rd of March, 12 Ukrainian aircraft lifted onto the air. 9 Sukhoi-24 bombers from Starokonstantinov, 2 MiG-29 from Uman, and another Su-27 from Belgorod. In combination with Neptune anti-ship missiles, the Ukrainian Air Force fired its Storm Shadow and Scalp cruise missiles towards the Black Sea Fleet, and presumably damaged 4 Russian warships in Sevastopol. We're talking about 2 Ropusha-class landing ships, Yamal and Azov, as well as an inactive ship the Russians captured from Ukraine in 2014, the Konstantin Olshansky. And the 4th one is the Ivan Hurs intelligence vessel that repelled an attack by Ukrainian naval kamikaze drones around 10 months ago. The big dilemma for Russia is, since they're the defenders, they have to be successful 100% of the time. It puts a lot of strain on personnel and equipment, whereas the attacker only has to be successful 1 time to claim victory. In order for Storm Shadow missiles to go through, Russian air defense capabilities have to be either destroyed or blinded. In this video, a Ukrainian Su-27 upgraded with various Western systems, as you can see with the iPad installed inside the cockpit, or how they outfitted Soviet-era aircraft with NATO missiles like the anti-radar AGM-88 HARM. With F-16s, the situation is going to get even worse. The F-16 models AMBM available in Europe have already gone through a midlife update, which granted them the ability to fire AGM-88 HARM missiles, as this will allow Ukraine to expand its wild weasel tactics. Essentially, a Ukrainian aircraft will be able to bait and destroy Russian anti-aircraft radars at a much greater rate. Less radars, less detection rates, and more missiles go through. In response to the threat of Crimea being cut off, Russian engineers have started building a railway line linking Rostov to the Crimean Peninsula. Although it's a bit too early to speak about this siege of Crimea, Ukraine is slowly turning up the heat, especially now with ATACMS missiles being within firing range of the Sebastopol harbor. That's all I have for you today. Let me know in the comment section what you thought of my analysis. If you're new to this channel, make sure to like and subscribe. And if you want to support my work, make sure to check out my Patreon or PayPal. The link is in the description below.